Hi, so this is the fourth in the series of Retribution Paladin damage in Mythic Hellfire Citadel. In this part we're going to cover Iskar, Socrethar and Lord Zakon, as these are likely to be the next three bosses most guilds tackle. Okay, well, damage on Iskar is relatively straightforward. Depending on how your raid group does the fight, you'll generally need to go through standard single target rotation until the transition and then burn down the resonance while cleaving off onto the other adds. After the resonance is down, it's on to whichever add your guild decides it wants to do next. Obviously you want to use Light's Hammer for this and Seal of Righteousness, and you want to have those both active just before the resonance becomes targetable, because you want to be straight on the resonance when it pops up. So place your Light's Hammer about a second of the transition comes in. You've got a couple of global cooldowns probably anyway, so place it, but keep an eye on the percentage, place it on the right percentage. Switch your seals. Second trinket choice will probably either be Discordant Chorus or Unending Hunger. Discordant Chorus, of course, is only really useful during that transition. So ask yourself this: are the adds dying before the boss comes back down? If not, you might want to use Discordant Chorus. If they are, then probably Unending Hunger, because that, although it's unreliable, gives you a buff at different stages of the fight, both the single target and the AoE stages. Can come down to personal preference, of course, or the relative qualities. Of course, a mythic of one will probably trump a heroic of the other. Doesn't very much depend on exactly... Well, it does depend a lot actually on how the boss is placed in relation to these. The guild I'm in at the moment, when I first started, they had the resonance miles away from the boss, and also away the boss would start, I should say, and also miles away from the adds where they spawn as well. So you were killing the resonance single target and then moving over to the adds. Obviously that has different challenges of its own. But most people sort of lump everything together. You just have to be careful that you are focusing the resonance still. Don't worry about maximizing overall DPS if the resonance isn't dying quickly enough. Now make sure you research the timings of the fight for your group. It may be that you use Light's Hammer on the pull and then only during transitions. Now the first time I was killing Iskar, I was actually getting another sneaky Light's Hammer in after the first transition, I should say, and it was still up for the second transition. But if you're killing it quite quickly, and with gear levels as they are these days, you might well be killing it too quickly to do that. Don't feel you have to use Light's Hammer off cooldown as you do with like Execution Sentence so much. Just make sure that it is there for the transition. The same will go for Avenging Wrath itself. You need to make sure these are up during the transition, so in reality you'll use Avenging Wrath at the pull and then you will use it for each transition and at no other point. Depending on the timings of the fight, after you've used it on the third transition, if the boss is still up and it's burnt out, you may find you've got another use of it, but don't try and use it between transitions in general, because you won't have it for all the transitions then. I am a fan of Long Arm of the Law anyway, but I particularly think it's the obvious choice for this fight. It's enough to get you out for Chakram and back in again, and also if there's winds active on you, Judging gives you that little speed buff that stops you getting pushed too far away from the boss, in the way that Speed of Light won't, because one, it overcompensates for the pushback, and it's only available for a short duration, and it's a long cooldown, so you can't keep using it. Let's say you're like one of the last people or the last person to get hold of the eye. But in terms of DPS, that's ultimately what it's about. You know, the thing that makes the real difference, of course, is maximizing your damage during the transition, whilst at the same time still maintaining high damage on the priority target of the resonance. You should, when you look at your logs, see that you are very high on resonance damage. And the way you'll help yourself with that, as I say, I will reiterate, get the Hammer of Light down, the Seal of Righteousness up just before then. Remember, you can switch a Seal of Righteousness a few seconds before. You're not losing that much damage. Censure doesn't do that much damage, especially the thing there. You notice there, I can see the transition was coming up quite soon. I tried to hold on to that Empowered Divine Storm, but I did use it because it was going to fade before the transition. Because the transitions are percentage based, sometimes it's you know, you're sort of trying to judge it a little bit. Obviously, if you can have an empowered Divine Storm and a Final Verdict buff for when the ads appear, that will be god DPS. But if you have to, you know, if it's going to fade before they appear and are targetable, then just get it used. Don't waste that. Okay. Okay, so next up is Socrethar. 2 phases, much like on Heroic. There's very little difference between this and Heroic. First phase is pure single target rotation. As always, make sure you know when the ring will be used. I use Seraphim usually on this. On this particular one, I was using Final Verdict. I'm getting ready for that. I am imagining that when patch 6.2.3 comes out and I start to get some item level upgrades, I'm going to be using Final Verdict more and more, but we will see. But I have generally, for most kills, used Seraphim on this. There is an ad that spawns. You may have to switch to it. Just check that you know that. What you don't want to be doing is moving to it and then you're not supposed to, and you're just losing DPS time because you've switched to something else. But you may be needed for the stun as well as just damage to kill it off quickly. But once you're properly into phase 2, it's much like on Heroic. Obviously, it's maintaining a high single target DPS rotation on the boss, but switching, as soon as Dominators are up, you're switching hard to them, making sure Avenging Wrath is up for Dominators so that it dies really, really quickly. Now, one thing to watch out for, normally, of course, when you're going to pop Avenging Wrath, you would pop Execution Sentence at the same time. It's no good doing that on the Dominators because remember, it's not an even tick like Light's Hammer with Execution Sentence. The main damage is in the last couple of ticks, and they probably won't hit because the Dominators do not generally last 10 seconds. So there's a couple of options for this. One, you could fire off your Avenging Wrath about, say, 11 seconds before the Dominator is about to spawn. That way you're using Execution Sentence on the soul and using the first 10 seconds on the soul, getting maximum damage on the Execution Sentence. And then you've still got you've still got Avenging Wrath up for the Dominators, but just the normal 20% version. But of course, that's nowhere near as much damage as using the first 10 seconds on the Dominator. The alternative, and the one I used in that particular case there, if you noticed, was use Avenging Wrath when the Dominator spawns. I had no choice there. I wasn't even in melee combat before that anyway. And then I fired off Execution Sentence once I was back onto the soul. It still benefits from Avenging Wrath, but just the base 20% damage rather than any of the 4 set. Now, if you do take Final Verdict, it gives you the option of weaving in Divine Storm when you've got the Final Verdict buff when the Shadow Callers are gripped in. If you're using Seraphim, don't bother, just single target the soul or the Dominators as necessary. Don't bother trying to cleave. There's no point. Just think of other people will do enough cleave to those anyway. You need to know when the ring is going to be popped again. Again, it depends on your timings, and the timings we have here, the ring is designed to be popped for the second Dominator, and this comes back to what we said about using Avenging Wrath. It's not really an option when the ring is going to be popped. You must use Avenging Wrath at the same time as the ring so that those first 10 seconds are working with the ring, because it will mean more damage whilst the ring is active, but also the explosion will do more damage as well, and that is effective on the soul as well when that pops up. So when the ring is going to be used on a Dominator, if the ring is going to be used at the start when the Dominator appears, that's when you have got to use Avenging Wrath. If the ring is going to be used, say, 10 seconds before, all to the better, fine, that's okay. Alright. Fel Lord is pure single target. I for most of the time on this one, have absolutely gone Seraphim and Class Trinket, and Glyph of Divine Storm, because double jeopardy and mass exorcism completely useless. This is pure single target. Making sure if the ring's popped at the start, which inevitably it will be, that you fire off your Avenging Wrath then. Usual thing with Seraphim, just have to get Seraphim up as quickly as you can before you fire that off. There are things that can affect your DPS. One, are you soaking or not? And if you are soaking, when are you soaking? Obviously, when that happens, you're going to lose your stacks on your Libra of Vindication. Nothing can be done about that. It may interfere. If you're having to soak at a time when you'd normally want to use Avenging Wrath, obviously that's going to interfere as well. There is a fair amount of planning on this one if you have to soak at an awkward time into when's the best time to use your Avenging Wraths, so that you still get to use all your charges of it. If you have to move significantly away from the boss to soak a wake that's heading for a pillar, again, try and Crusader strike the boss on the way out so you can hit it on the way in and not lose your stacks, but that's obviously a danger. If you have to run out with seeds, again, there's another little danger there, but you'll just have to live with that. Beyond that, it's purely single target fight. Bear in mind that at 30% it's going to go transition, which means it's very likely the ring will be used for that. It's the same as any fight. You need to know exactly when the ring's going to be used. It has to be agreed in a hand. And make sure that if you are using Seraphim, that you have it ready to go, even if that means delaying it a little bit at that point. And that's really all there is to it. Obviously, the key to doing damage when you've got multiple cooldowns is to line up as many of those cooldowns as possible, which is why with Seraphim it's an extra cooldown to line up, and you have to make sure that your Seraphim is on at the same time as the ring will be going off where possible, and your Avenging Wrath, especially those crucial first 10 seconds when you've got the 4-set buffing it. Absolutely crucial there. And also maximise your uptime on your Hammer of Wrath for that as well. Okay, pretty much it. Other things that can affect your choice though of movement speed increase. This is a fight where you may well have to move out either to soak a Fisher that is not in melee range, or to get out for seeds. Now, I favour Long Arm of the Law for this because as long as when seeds are coming, you will position yourself as max melee range towards the markers where you're going to drop the seeds, then Long Arm of the Law is enough to get you there in time, and it also helps get you backwards back into it as well. You can see that I've chosen one where I'm actually still just about able to hit the boss. He does have a fair hitbox, fair sized hitbox. The only time you will be in trouble using Long Arm of the Law is if you get befouled, and most people, certainly most groups I've been with, when you have befouled, you position yourself on the left of the boss as we look at it now, near the entrance side. Now, if this is happening just before seeds are coming, it's perfectly possible you can have befouled and then get seeds. There's nothing mutually exclusive about those. That will mean you will never make it with Long Arm of the Law. So what you might decide is that actually the safest option is to go with Speed of Light. It is stunningly unlikely to have befouled at the same time as seeds are coming. Usually healers will sort of try and heal you up a bit more quickly if that's going to cause a problem. But if not, yeah, Speed of Light is the only thing that will get you across there in time. There we go. That's those 3 fights. Easy in Esper. Okay, so in the next video, which should be coming out around about the weekend time, I'll cover Zul'Harak and Tyrant Velhari. And then after that, when I've worked it out myself, might be a bit later, it'll be Manaroth and Archimonde. Till then, I'll see you later.